Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, and it is time for another mailbag where I answer your questions, hot takes, observations, and ultimately your comments about anything other than tennis, because this is the annual off-season No Tennis Questions mailbag. Throughout the year, I sometimes get personal questions, questions about my TV preferences, music, food, career, tennis commentary, and sometimes I answer them, but usually I think to myself, hey, some people care, but most people don't care. Let's stick to the tennis coverage. That is what most people are here for. And this is when I allow myself to just talk about all the other stuff that I like to talk about. So, needless to say, it is always a blast doing this mailbag. Let's get going. The first one is from ManQ. Do you film from two different locations in the US? I noticed that sometimes your video background has a shelf on the right with Otto the Orange, and other times there's a TV and a couple of tennis rackets. Thanks for the amazing content, Gil. Keep up the great work. Thank you for that. And yes, your observation is a good one. I do film from two separate locations in the US. This is my Tucson, Arizona studio, and the other one you're referring to with our friend Otto the Orange is my Los Angeles, California studio. And when I say studio, just to be clear, I mean the portion of my apartment that is dedicated to being the studio, not a whole separate studio. That would be something, maybe one day. The reason why I have this set up and why I'm back and forth so much is because of my girlfriend, Jenna, who is in the sports media industry, just like I am. And it is an industry where you don't always get to choose where you live. That's the reality of it. If you are a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer and you have the degree, the demand for those jobs is such that anywhere in the country where you want to live, you can basically live there and find a job because you do a job that is very much in demand, and you can find a job wherever you want, is basically, I think, the case. In many career paths in sports media, it ain't like that at all, because there are so few opportunities, so few jobs out there. Sometimes you got to go where the opportunities come. And, I am in LA because of Tennis Channel. Jenna is here in Tucson because she's a local sports anchor here in Tucson. Think about it. In every city in the country, there are between 3 and, let's say, 10 sports anchors. So if you look at, I don't know, let's say there's 210 markets in the United States and you do the math, think about how many people want to do that job versus how many jobs are actually available. So that demand makes it so that you don't have the flexibility necessarily of where you're going to go. And that's why we have this setup. Now, luckily, I have a lot of flexibility. I am here in Tucson a lot, so I don't really say that I'm long distance. I say, sort of half distance because, again, luckily I get to be here a lot. When I don't need to be in LA for work, I try to be here, and that's sort of the setup. Next one is from WTJHD. Hi, Gil. 2025 is coming. How do you usually plan your year? For example, going for holiday, commentating for Tennis Channel, etc. Thanks and happy holiday. As far as planning, as I sort of alluded to in the last comment, my life can be pretty chaotic sometimes. When I say chaotic, I just mean I'm not able to really settle into a routine. Every week is something different based on what time zone is the pro tennis in and what are my commentary duties, and my traveling, and I'm going back and forth. So I don't have the kind of life where I'm doing the same thing all the time. And there are pros and cons to that. On one hand, it doesn't get boring. It doesn't get monotonous. It's exciting. On the other hand, I think sometimes you crave routine. And there are certainly difficulties to not having as much routine. That's a roundabout way of saying I don't plan a whole lot. I kind of take it week by week. I do know my commentary schedule, at least for Tennis Channel, for January and February. I don't know beyond that. So if I wanted to schedule a vacation, for example, I couldn't really do it I wouldn't want to do it 6 months out in advance, because I do try to keep my calendar as open as possible, and I'm still figuring out what the schedule looks like for 2025 in various aspects. So heck yeah, I'm going to go on vacation in December. December is the only month that I know way, way, way in advance that I can get away. So next week, I'm going to Hawaii. I'm super pumped up about it. Never been. It's going to be awesome. I think I answered the question. Oh, I guess the other thing is I do a lot of planning in December, and I'm able to do some of the work I would say in entrepreneurship that I normally wouldn't have time to do. So, for example, a couple of years ago, I realized where the media landscape was shifting. There was a lot of short form content. TikTok was coming up, YouTube Shorts was coming up, Instagram Reels, like all that was happening. And I felt like, I need to position myself to kind of get in on this. And at that point, I used December, my free month, to basically figure out who I could hire to help me with that. And I did, and she's still with me and does a great job. So anything like that, I deal with in December. I'll say right now, I'll throw this out into the universe. Big priority for 2025 for me is to how do I want to put this? I don't want to just say like increase my following on Instagram, because that's not really what it's about. But I want to start having a content producing presence on Instagram. And I want to start expanding what I do and my brand, so to speak, which is a weird, I don't like putting it that way. I do want to start to use Instagram on a more regular basis, and I want to dedicate myself to it, and I want to get comfortable with the platform, which doesn't come naturally to me. It's a bit of a leap of faith, because it's not like Twitter, where when I got on Twitter, about a decade ago, it did come very naturally to me, and I think I was pretty good at it when I was sort of diving in, when I was very active on there, and when I really cared about being engaging on there on a regular basis and being consistent. I've trailed off because of kind of my priorities, but yeah, next year, Instagram, it's going to be big for me. Give me a follow. That'd be great. If you're listening and you want to give me a little bit of a boost, a head start before I get things cranking on there. Gill Gross I think it's Gill Gross _. But yeah, so all the planning that needs to be done, buying equipment, figuring out like what is the content going to look like exactly, and how many days a week should it be, and how long should it be? And I'm sure all this stuff will sort of change, but that's an example of planning that I do in December when I have time to do it. All right, moving on. This next one is from Trip Raise. Hi, Gil. What's your Spotify Wrapped for 2024? Thanks for all the great work you do. Thank you. This mailbag always comes out like right when Spotify Wrapped comes out, which is super convenient. And I think normally, at least last year, if my memory serves, the top comment was, Gil, let's see your Spotify Wrapped. That's normally how it works. So I will show you guys my top 5 artists. I'm not showing you guys my top 5 songs because it doesn't work for me. I got into this last year, but I am an albums listener. I don't listen to playlists. I listen to albums. So my top songs always end up being the first couple songs off a couple of my favorite albums. It doesn't actually reflect my favorite songs. It just reflects my favorite albums, and it happens to be the first couple songs. So I play them more because whenever I start playing the album, at least I will always listen to track 1 or track 2. So No top songs, but top artists will do. All right, here we go. Number 1 is Jeff Rosenstock. Number 2 is The Last Dinner Party. Number 3 is Radiohead. Number 4 is No Worries. That is a collaboration between Anderson .Paak and the producer Knowledge. And number 5 is Beyonce. I know I could spend like 20 minutes just going through these. I'm going to try to spare everybody and not do that as best I can. But let's do a little rundown here. So first of all, rock was kind of what I was into this year. I was liking my rock music. And rock is just not very mainstream anymore, right? I mean, there are still some of those bands that sort of break through and are very widely known that are still going. But the reality is, if you're going to say, like, I want to listen to rock, that's kind of what I'm into at the moment. So let me find, the best rock records of the year. Like who's big on that scene. And like, you're ultimately going to end up with, I think, some like a hipster looking Spotify Wrapped. And I think my number 1 and number 2, I mean, some of you might know who Jeff Rosenstock and The Last Dinner Party are, but I'm guessing a lot of you guys are like, who? And that's just a reality, I feel like, of listening to rock these days. So Jeff Rosenstock, I was introduced to Jeff by Anthony Fantano, the Needle Drop, the internet's busiest music nerd, who is, if you're not aware, probably the most popular music critic on the internet. And, he's got a big YouTube channel. And he made Jeff's album, Hell Mode, his number 1 album last year. I had never listened to Jeff before that. And I'm like, oh, best album of the year? Like, let's give this a spin. And I loved it. I totally loved it. Not only that, I went back into Jeff's catalog and I loved his debut album. I loved his second album, No Worry. I loved, he did like this ska album, like a tribute to ska. I loved that too. So obviously music gets old if you listen to it too much. The reason Jeff Rosenstock ended up being my top artist is because I literally was into 4 albums of his because I kept going back and discovering other records that I also loved by Jeff Rosenstock. So that's him. The Last Dinner Party. By the way, Jeff, I realize I should have maybe led with this. Jeff, I love the guy. I recommend him. Probably not for everybody. It's a pretty raw sound, very energetic, pretty noisy. If the word, like, if the genre of punk rock is just like too much for you and like you just can't, I'm assuming there are some people who might start playing that and just be like, like too much. Like, you'll know it's not for you right away if you're one of those people. But I'm just saying, like, Jeff has that punk rock raw energy to him that is not for everybody. The Last Dinner Party, probably more like agreeable, more for the masses. I've seen them categorized as glam rock, but it's very like grandiose, theatrical, big, shimmering kind of sound. They're from the UK. They released their debut album this year, so they're a very new young band. Female vocalist named Abigail, who is incredible, and I absolutely loved their album. Probably my most played album, single album of the year was The Last Dinner Party, and their album was called, what was it called? I'm blanking. It has a crazy name. It's called, Prelude to Ecstasy. Yeah, there's a lot going on with them. They're great. Number 3 is Radiohead. I got introduced to Radiohead from a podcast. Some of you may know because it's very popular. The Dissect podcast with Cole Kushner. He does super deep, super in-depth, serialized music analysis. I'm talking 45-minute episodes dedicated to one 4-minute song. And he did a season on Radiohead's In Rainbows. And man, like when somebody appreciates music to the level that Cole Kushner does, and he's able to explain to you why he's appreciating it, it's almost hard not to get into it. So I got really into Radiohead, especially In Rainbows, especially OK Computer. Radiohead fans, like if you're a true Radiohead fan, you will kill me for this, but I haven't really vibed with Kid A yet, but maybe I'll get there at some point. I know Radiohead is, big time. They have a very, very feverish fan base. Number 4, No Worries, Anderson .Paak and Knowledge. This was an album called Why Laud, Lawd, that I loved doing work to. Less experimental, a little bit less noisy than a lot of the music I was into this year. And therefore, it became a good option for me when I wanted to get some work done. And I'd say it's a spacey, funky, smooth, kind of R&B hip-hop fusion. Anderson .Paak, easily one of my favorite vocalists ever. I think, he's got a very, very unique delivery that has a lot of attitude, and I love the sound. I love the voice. I think there's so much range there. Who sings and raps as well as Anderson .Paak, right? Because most singers don't rap well. Most rappers don't sing well. I'd say Anderson is probably at a higher level with the singing compared to his rapping, but man, he does both at a high level. And yeah, I liked this No Worries album a lot. I was a little bit surprised to see Beyonce at number 5. Now, she obviously dropped her Cowboy Carter album this year, which was her, I don't want to call it her foray into country music because it's not a country album, in my opinion. Like, to me, it sounds like a Beyonce album influenced by country, not a country album by Beyonce. Do you know what I mean? I enjoyed it quite a bit. I thought it was great. I think Beyonce's on an incredible run. I loved Lemonade. I loved Homecoming. I loved Renaissance. And now I'd say I loved Cowboy Carter. Loved might be a strong word, but I didn't feel like I listened to it so much, but apparently I did because it came in at number 5. So there you have it, my Spotify Wrapped. I know someone asked me to do my Wrapped for food, like my Spotify Wrapped for food, because I did that last year. And yeah, let's do it. Basically, I scrolled through my camera roll before coming on and doing this, and I chose the photos that sparked the most meaningful memory. These weren't all of the best things I ate or the best things I cooked, but they're things that for some reason gave me joy or reminded me of travel or something like that. Like, for example, this first one is something I got in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for pickleball play-by-play. And this is frozen custard. Milwaukee is the frozen custard capital of the world. The flavor is butter pecan. This is from a place called Kops. And the difference between frozen custard and ice cream, custard is made with egg yolk, and it's made with a machine that doesn't allow any air into the kind of formation process. Anyway, it's richer. It is more dense. It is velvety and buttery compared to ice cream, which is made with milk and cream as opposed to egg yolk. I was blown away by how good this was. This is something I cooked. Ultimate comfort food in my eyes. Literally number 1 comfort food. Pork tonkatsu with Japanese curry and rice. This is a grilled cheese I made. An idea I got from YouTuber Steven Cusato from Not Another Cooking Show. It's his signature grilled cheese with braised short rib, red wine braised short rib, arugula, Gruyere cheese, pickled onion, and a little raspberry jam. It's a crazy concoction. One of the most delicious things I ate all year. Brussels sprouts on the side. They weren't that good, but they were there. So that's that. This is a beef roll. This is something that I love to eat when I'm in the San Gabriel Valley. That is east of LA. And I drive through the San Gabriel Valley quite a bit because whenever I drive from LA to Tucson, I need to drive through the SGV, which has a massive, massive Chinese population. It is where all of really the best Chinese food can be found in the greater Los Angeles area. This is a beef roll. It's got scallion pancake, cilantro, and green onion, and hoisin sauce. Very simple, but it's just, and sliced beef. That's the beef part of the beef roll. I'm just like obsessed with this dish. I know it's simple and casual, but I just love it. This is my Sunday gravy. Made it myself. You got sausage, meatball, short rib. You braise it in a tomato sauce. The tomato sauce ends up absorbing the flavor from the meat, becomes deep and meaty. And I really this is one of my favorite things to cook, favorite things to eat, not only because it's delicious, but also because I like the balance that you get here for a pasta, because for me, the ideal is 50% pasta, 50% meat. So you're not eating straight carbs. You feel like you're getting your protein in there. And then you got some ricotta cheese kind of dolloped around the edges there, which is, it does a nice job of just freshening up this dish, which it needs because it's pretty heavy. That's it from another angle. That is the zucca fried zucchini sandwich with ricotta cheese once again and lemony artichoke spread from a place in Beverly Hills called the Beverly Hills Cheese Store. That is the best vegetarian sandwich I have ever had. I didn't miss meat on that one at all. From Jack Young, alcoholic beverage of choice. It's a tough one. I think I spread the wealth. I mix it up quite a bit. I will tell you that my current beer phase is Japanese lagers. I like the crisp, clean, dry finish. I think it just goes so well with fatty foods, salty foods, spicy foods. It's the ultimate palate cleansing beer. And that's why I've kind of gravitated towards your Japanese lagers of the world. If I go to a supermarket right now and I got to grab a beer, give me Sapporo. Give me some Sapporo. So that's how you know you're old, when you talk about alcoholic beverages based on how well they pair with food. I'm at that phase now. Yeah, that's where I'm at. I like wine, but I'm not like a wine connoisseur. I save my connoisseuranic energy for coffee. I'm well aware I just made up that word. But I will add this before I move on to the next one. I bought some eggnog because it is that time of year. Wanted to be festive. Got some eggnog during Thanksgiving shopping. And I also got some Bullet bourbon. And I have been very much enjoying my little nightcap spiked eggnog spiked with Bullet bourbon. Been loving that. Highly recommend. We're going to stay on the drinks here because the next comment is from Julius. What's your preferred type of coffee? Espresso, flat white, black, etc. Everybody who knows me knows my answer to this question. How good's the coffee? That's the only way I can answer this question. How good's the coffee? Because if the coffee's good, I want it black. I drink black coffee every morning. I'm a pour over guy. I have a Baratza Encore ESP. It's actually a budget grinder. There are better grinders out there, but they're so expensive. But I grind my own beans. I have a Hario V60. I have a nice fellow kettle, and I make pour over coffee every morning. And I buy good coffee beans, high quality coffee beans. That coffee I'm drinking black. It's delicious. I love it. It's one of my great joys in life is brewing coffee and drinking good coffee. But if I'm at an airport, I don't want that coffee black. Please, for the love of God, put some sugar in there. Put some half and half in there. I do not want that black. So essentially the more, the commodity coffee that is usually lower quality and sometimes like super, super, super dark roasted, that to me tastes terrible black. So that's where I'm going to want some help from, half and half, which just cuts the bitterness and the astringency, and, sugar, which will like cut the sourness and, all that stuff. But that said, when I go to a good cafe nowadays, because at home I brew pour over coffee and I'm drinking black coffee at home all the time, I actually will often go to the espresso based beverages when I'm at a cafe. And I love a flat white. I think flat white is kind of that ideal ratio. Lattes are usually a little too milky for me. I'm not getting enough of the espresso. I do like cappuccinos, but depending on the style of coffee, I think sometimes flat white is actually a better milk to, frothed milk, steamed milk to espresso ratio. So I'm doing a lot of flat whites. I'm doing a lot of cappuccinos when I'm out at coffee shops. I don't do straight espresso. Not that I wouldn't enjoy it, but I just can't get past the fact that it's like 3 sips and it's gone. I just can't do it for that reason. Next one is from Kaya. Happy holidays, Gill. Looking forward to the yearly music and food highlights updates. As a tennis commentator, what are the stylistic differences and nuances in commentary between a stop-and-go sport like tennis or baseball against a continuous flow sport like hockey or basketball? What are the differences in preparation and in execution, and which do you enjoy more? I got to say, I'm a little bit worried about this comment because I could probably get way too nerdy and go way too long. Like, I'm a total geek when it comes to this stuff. It's my craft, and I'm into it, right? Like, I'm into play-by-play broadcasting, and I want to keep this thing interesting and keep it moving. So I would say I'd simplify it. I'd simplify it like this. In the sports where there's more dead time, I think the real difference is you have more time to have nuanced conversations about the players, about the contest that you're watching unfold in front of your eyes. You're able to hammer home more storylines. You're arguably able to insert more information, more thorough information into the broadcast itself. You're able to do more analyzing. And in sports where the ball is in play more, and you're having to, as a play-by-play person, continuously describe that action as it's happening, that is filling up your show. You're not telling stories in that moment. You're not necessarily introducing analysis into that moment, or having a conversation about what you're seeing. And therefore, your technical abilities, at least from a play-by-play standpoint, your technical abilities are what's important. How are your verbs? How are your mechanics? How are your descriptions? How is your word economy? How is your inflection? How's your overall sound? These are the things that's important, right? You have that craft of play-by-play, that technical craft, that really is the most important thing. Whereas in tennis, there's certainly some craftsmanship involved, but it is not quite as heavily, I would say, emphasized as things like your knowledge, your information, your ability to bring interesting content to the broadcast and know when to bring that information and how to bring that information in a concise manner. So think continuous flow sports. I like your terminology here too. Continuous flow sports, think description, right? Technical play-by-play. And then for baseball, which you do describe the ball when it's in play in baseball, so that aspect is you have a little bit of both. But baseball and tennis, think more along the lines of knowledge and content. Differences in preparation. In the team sports, you have more players to deal with, but you don't go in as much depth. In tennis, you're spending usually 2 hours with 2 human beings. So you need to have more depth, arguably, when it comes to those particular 2 players compared to a football game. There's 100 players, but 75 of the players, you might only have, 2 or 3 lines of information on them. And then there's the part where you're memorizing numbers, right? A huge part of your job, and if you're calling an American football game or a hockey game, is to help the viewer who's watching identify the players in real time, especially in a sport like hockey or football where the players are wearing helmets. The biggest service you're providing to the television viewer, above all, is telling them who the heck has the ball, who made the catch, who made the tackle, who has the puck, who the hell just scored, et cetera, et cetera. Like, that is number one, IDing. From Steve, favorite TV show. I think I did my top 5 favorite of all time last year. I'm not going to do that again. I will say I went on a massive TV drought, and I have never been a prolific TV show watcher, but my life got busy enough where I went 4 months without starting a show. I just started one, Industry on HBO. I like it a lot so far. Somebody told me to watch it. My TV friend who I trust, he tells me what to watch, and I just watch it. It's literally how I roll. I watched season 3 of The Bear this year, and I think I talked about The Bear on the No Tennis Questions mailbag last year because I love it so much. And season 3 slowed down, and it got some criticism. And yeah, I mean, the pacing was way less frenetic. It lost part of its identity as a show, but hey, I still love the writing. I still love the way that show looks. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love the acting. I love the characters. So did I enjoy season 3 of The Bear? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Even if it wasn't as good as the first 2 seasons. I think they're going to come back really, really strong next season. That's my opinion. The Bear combines, the Bear is a great show on FX. It's about food, partially. Let's go to the next one. From Coyd. Hey, Gill, what would you say is your favorite sport to watch other than tennis? What's your favorite team/player in that sport? And what's your best memory of watching it? Thanks, and hope your Thanksgiving went well. Always been hockey. Always been NHL hockey. Big New York Rangers fan. I watch most Ranger games. I take time out of my life to watch the Rangers when they play. Can't really say that about my other childhood teams, Knicks, Yankees, although I did get into the Yankees playoff run. I got in the Knicks playoff run last year. But that's kind of me parachuting in, where the Rangers, I'm kind of all in all the time. I love hockey as a product. And it's hard to describe why. Favorite team/player in that sport. I always liked the goalies. So Henrik Lundqvist was one of my sporting idols. I loved his competitiveness. I loved his intense focus. He was extremely classy as well in everything that he did. And now he's in broadcasting. He does a great job with that. But yeah, if I had to say favorite New York Ranger, I'd probably still have to say Igor Shesterkin, who is now their goaltender. So Ranger fans, in a lot of ways, are very unlucky. The last time they won a championship was 1994, which is before I was born. So I've never experienced a Rangers championship, even though they have contended many times. They've been in many Eastern Conference finals. They've been in a Stanley Cup final. They've been in the playoffs. The vast majority of my life, they've been in the playoffs. And while I'm grateful for that, it's been, ultimately I'm becoming more and more cynical by the year. But where was I here? Best memory of watching it? Many of my birthday parties as a kid were, I would get Ranger tickets and I would get to go with all my friends. So those were great memories. I would ask for that for my birthday to go to Ranger game with my friends. And I definitely went to games with my dad. And that was, honestly, I would say food has always been more of a bonding item with me and my dad more than sports, because my dad's not a sports fan. I got my sports fandom from my cousin, not my parents, really. But in the case of Ranger games, we did go. And I would say, if anything, my dad would get a little bit of sports fandom from me, where most father-son dynamics, it's sort of the other way around, at least initially, not with my family. There's also and this is a lesson in I guess, accessibility and how powerful it can be. ESPN Plus, right? I have that subscription. Tennis fans in the United States know. If you want to watch any court, US Open, Wimbledon, Australian Open, and you want to stream any court you want, you need ESPN Plus. Same thing for MMA fans. If you want to buy UFC pay-per-views and watch every UFC card, you need ESPN Plus. Well, as a New York Ranger fan, out of market, not living in New York, not having a cable TV subscription within New York, I'm still able to watch every Ranger game, almost every Ranger game, through ESPN Plus. So I also have this subscription that serves me so well and helps my ability to follow it, which just goes to show you how important that kind of thing can be. Our next one is from JJ. I really enjoyed your US Open coverage. It's always fun to hear your takes, but I couldn't help notice the focus on the pastrami sandwich during your food review. It got me thinking. Tennis is such a global sport with fans from all over the world, bringing unique cultures and cuisines into the mix. Have you thought about exploring more of these international influences in your coverage, whether through food, culture, or even how tennis connects with audiences abroad? Well, yes, I have thought about this, but I feel like the only way to do this properly is to travel. And I think I'm going to be doing a little bit more of that. I'm hoping to travel to some challenger tournaments and do some commentary for the ATP next year. So that might provide me with a little bit of travel opportunities. Tennis Channel has been having me do some pickleball events, which has been fun, and I've traveled for those. This year I went to Milwaukee. I went to Kansas City. And that combined with the fact that I am trying to do more Instagram, as I said earlier in the show, I think that I probably should incorporate some of because that's a part of me traveling. When I travel, food is top of mind. So I am thinking about how can I take advantage of where I am to try something that is either unique to the location or particularly good when consumed in that location. You know what I mean? I try to really, I think I'll get into it. Somebody left a comment about food later on where I can kind of give you some examples. Next one is from Joe J. John. Hey, Gill, I know your channel is focused largely on the numbers and data, but do you ever feel interested in talking about gear? It doesn't have to be related to the pros gear, and you don't have to be invested like other review channels, but do you have any interest in talking about rackets, specs, strings, shoes, etc.? Yeah, it's funny you ask this because I kind of got into gear this year. I started watching a lot more gear YouTube. I got myself a new racket. I've been experimenting with strings, and I've immersed myself into the tennis gear world a lot more this year. As far as talking about it on YouTube, look, I have a very strict philosophy here. I only want to do something if I think I have a chance to do it better than anybody else. If I feel like I can't do it better than anybody else, I don't even want to try it because I don't think it's good for anybody to kind of be, third, fourth, fifth, sixth best. And obviously, the point I'm getting at here, there are incredible gear YouTubers out there. One of them is Tennis Nerd. I actually had dinner with Jonas in LA recently, which was awesome. He's a great guy. His channel is amazing. He's been in the game for a long time. He's incredibly knowledgeable. He's incredibly dedicated to it. And he puts a lot of time and effort into being an expert on tennis gear. I love rackets and runners. Luca does a great channel. I also love Beckett from Tencom. His channel is awesome. So there are so many amazing tennis gear channels out there. I'm not going to do it better than them. It's just not going to happen. So yeah, I have no interest in doing it. Now, what I will do, and I did try to do that at one point this year, as insofar as it's relevant to the professionals, I do want to maybe have some of those guys on when there is news in the pro gear world. So let's say, like, I know Sinner was actually, and I know this was insane, but Sinner was seen training with some blacked out rackets this offseason. Or was it this offseason? It might have been between Bear C and the ATP finals. Whatever it be, despite Sinner's unbelievable success in 2024, this is very on brand for him. Just a dude who, as I've said many times, impossible to satisfy. He's actually experimenting with rackets. Let's say, for instance, Sinner makes a racket change at the start of 2025, which I don't think will happen, but let's say that happens. I'll have one of them on, and I'll have them, we'll talk about it. That I'd be interested in. But will it ever just be me, making content specific to gear? No. From Catherine Harper, any goals for your own tennis game? Interested in padel or pickleball? So, goals for my own tennis game. Man, I have a lot, but it's just hard. It goes back to not having a ton of routine in my life. I try to play as much as I possibly can, but it's difficult for me to be very regimented about it. And therefore, it's very stop and start for me. So I might kind of build myself up where I'm in really good shape. My game is feeling good. I'm playing up to my ability. And then US Open hits. Bang. I don't touch a racket for 3 weeks. I don't really even exercise for 3 weeks. Because it's just that chaotic a time. And now you go back to square one, right? Everybody knows that. You lose it very, very quickly. So I have that kind of up, down, up, down, up, down nature with tennis. I haven't gotten coaching in over 10 years. Well, that's not true. It's been about 10 years since I've truly been coached. And everything about my game, obviously, I was developed with good technique and I had good coaches. So you don't really lose that. But have bad habits seeped in? Are there things that I would like to work on with a high level coach? Yeah. So maybe that's one goal, to go back to getting some coaching to try to work on some stuff. But ultimately, the main thing that I can always get better is fitness. Just making my legs stronger and making my cardio better. That determines how well I'm actually playing at the end of the day, is how good a shape I'm in, mainly. I would love to also get back to competing a little bit, maybe play a tournament, maybe play a UTR tournament. I want to feel that rush again. I miss that. So I have a lot of goals for my own tennis game. Question is that my priority? And often it ends up taking a back seat, unfortunately, but I'm going to try to make some progress there. I don't have any inroads of playing padel or paddle. I just don't even know how to go about that. Pickleball, I just have interest in getting my girlfriend into it because I think it'd be fun. I can play sometimes. I'll get together with a friend here or there, and we'll play. And I enjoy it. But as far as playing on a regular basis, I don't play pickleball on a regular basis. The only way I would is if I ended up playing with Jenna. And I kind of want her to. I do want to do that. I just think it'd be fun for us together to play sometimes together. That's all. Where tennis, you can't do that because the learning curve is too steep, right? I mean, you can do it, but she can't play tennis with me. She's not good enough, and it would take her a long time to get good enough. That's the beauty of pickleball, is that you don't have that learning curve. Next one is from Zetristan. How much did Gill gross in 2024? All right, I like the pun. I like it a lot. I'm not going to tell you how much I grossed in 2024. I will say I'm comfortable sharing. I'll give you a little nugget of info. 20% of my income came from Monday Match Analysis, whether that be audio, video, sponsorships, all that stuff. 20%. The other 80% came from commentary. So that's kind of my split for 2024. The reason I can tell you that number exactly is I just did the calculations for tax purposes. So that number is fresh in my head. Next one is from Sean. Hi, Gill. Don't know if this question is too late, but would like to ask, as an established journalist yourself, what advice would you give to someone like myself, still in university, gathering work experience and attempting to get in the field? I appreciate the question. I get it sometimes from students, and I'm always happy to talk to journalism students and help in any way I can. Sometimes it feels difficult to help, but my best advice, and it sounds like you are doing it because you wrote it in your comment that you're in university, gathering work experience and attempting to get into the field. So gathering experience is the key operative there because that is your ticket to everything. And college is great because there are opportunities to get involved. And the advice that it sounds like you don't need, is to get involved and get that out of classroom real world experience because that's how you're going to get better. Now, I'll take it a step further though, because it sounds like you have that part down. The next step, I would say, Sean, is taking your work and getting critical feedback on it. And that to me is one of the things that some students miss. They get the experience, they get the reps, right? And there's that saying, practice makes, right? Like you get better with practice. Practice doesn't make perfect. There's no perfect in this particular craft. But certainly the only way to get better is to get practice. However, it's almost like if you have bad serve technique and you hit 100 serves, right? All you're doing is just imprinting that bad serve technique. So I think there is a lot of similar stuff in media when it comes to working in sports media. Whatever you're doing, and I don't know exactly what it is you want to do within the field because there are multiple aspects, but whatever you're doing in college and whatever you want to do in the field, find people who you trust to give you honest feedback. That is going to accelerate your improvement. And ultimately, that's what it's about in college, getting better. Focus on getting better relentlessly. And the way to do that is to get reps, to get feedback on those reps, and then to make adjustments. And that's it. That's all it is. Rep, feedback, adjustment. Rep, feedback, adjustment. Or, adjustment, improvement, whatever word you want to use. So that's my advice. Next one is from Joshua. Hey, Gill, maybe you've shared before, but some questions about your own tennis. When did you start playing? How often do you play now? And how would you break down your strengths and weaknesses in the game? Started playing very young, like probably messed around for the first time when I was 6 or 7. And then I think I probably started doing tennis camps at 8 or 9 years old. Definitely 9, maybe 8. So long time, which is of course an advantage. The younger you start, the better. How often do you play now? As I mentioned, it's kind of sporadic. It's kind of inconsistent. Although when I'm in Tucson, I do, coach some juniors in Tucson at the JCC, and that gets me out on court most days. And I do hit. I'm not training. I'm not always being pushed in that environment or getting better, but I am playing. I am hitting. How would you break down your strengths and weaknesses? I am I'm a heavy forehand player. So I have a big spinning forehand that I like to be aggressive with. My backhand at its best is supposed to be consistent. Sometimes I battle with that. Like sometimes I just make too many errors on my backhand. I do have a good slice backhand. So I can always sort of go to that if my drive is giving me too much trouble. But that's, my two-hander is my less natural wing. My forehand is more my natural wing. I think I serve well for my height, but I'm not tall. And I have a good kick serve. There's not a huge gap between my second serve is pretty heavy and pretty fast, but my first serve isn't super, super damaging. So they're pretty close together because I do have that ability to accelerate and swing really hard. on my second serve, which definitely helps me. Right now, I mentioned fitness, but really like what holds me back right now would be my fitness, and then to some extent my consistency. I used to be, when I was a kid, when I trained, vigorously, every day over the summer and 3 days a week over the school year, I was a consistent kind of physical baseline grinder, and I've really lost that. I don't have the fitness, I don't have the consistency, so now I rely a little bit more on my ability to do damage off the ground. And again, I have a pretty big forehand, so I'm able to do it decently well. Next one from Will Casal. Hey Gil, what's your best pickup line? Need girl advice. All right, so I saw this comment, and I actually know Will a little bit. I know he's a tennis player, and I got to say, like, obviously one of the best people. I know that it's an app era, and everybody's meeting on the apps, all right? But if you want to meet girls in real life, tennis is a great way to do it. Get involved in live ball, right? Like, do clinics, I don't know if leagues are the best. And this is where, anyway, I won't go on a digression. But anyway, just get yourself in those tennis circles, right? Like, I've made a lot of friends. And when I moved to LA from New York, I had no friends in LA. Made a lot of friends through tennis, right? So, you might want to be using a tennis pickup line in this case. And so I looked it up on Google, tennis pickup lines. And my favorite one was, it went, I must be playing on grass because I'm falling for you. I mean, you can't beat that. That's pretty good. From Caleb, hey Gil, any chance we get a Winston Du versus Gill Gross matchup with a post-match analysis vid after? Dude, this sounds good to me. I'd like to do it. I just got to get myself... I'd like to do it. But I obviously would want to, in my, as I mentioned, right, chaotic schedule, sporadic training and working out where like sometimes I'm in shape and sometimes I'm not. I want to be in good condition for it. And I need to get some matches in, some real matches. I need to play some tournaments before I like hop on YouTube and play Winston Du. And it's not that I'm afraid to lose. If I lose, whatever. But I don't want to be tight. Like, I don't want to be super tight because I'm just not used to that pressure. And that would be pressure, right? Like, I'd be playing in front of how many people, right? Who knows how many views we'd get. So that would be a lot of pressure. I would just need to play some tournaments. So let me hit phase one. I would love to play with Winston, though. And by the way, it's really interesting and inspiring to me. It says something about the purity of the game and what tennis is. That a guy like Winston Du, who is not only not a pro, not even like a Carousel level, like, top 500, but less than top 100 pro, right? He's just a 4-5, right? And that doesn't matter to anybody. Everybody can still be highly entertained by watching Winston play tennis because they're attached to his story or they like his personality. And they're interested in still watching him play the game. And that's very informative. It's not necessarily about level, right? Like, isn't that a lesson for the entire tennis world? It's not all about level. People are interested in watching this game if you are able to contextualize it properly and give people some sort of rooting interest and give people a story to get attached to, right? What do you think about AI art and why is it the lamest thing ever? Yeah, isn't the whole point of art that it's personal to the artist and that you're making some sort of human connection that you maybe are able to relate to, or at least like feel in a certain way, like feel some sort of human connection? Yes, AI art is lame. From Fed Rafa, hey Gil, I know you consider yourself a foodie. If you were a death row inmate, what would you request for your final meal? This question kind of kills me. It's really, really hard to choose. As far as like comfort, what's a meal that just feels comfortable for me? I'm going to go chicken parm, Italian-American classic. Growing up in New York, like I just feel like there's a lot of great Italian-American food. And by the way, it is Italian-American because chicken parm was not invented in Italy. Italians know this, right? When you ask for Parmigiana in Italy, they give you eggplant parm, right? I love eggplant parm too. But yeah, chicken parm, thin, crispy chicken cutlet with, red sauce and melted fresh mozzarella. Actually, not fresh. Sometimes fresh, but also sometimes dehydrated, like that pizza cheese kind of thing. Sometimes that's better for a chicken parm. This one's a little long. Let me shorten it since it's rapid fire. Hi, Gill. Let's say you're going to have to play a game against a random person on Earth. And if you lose this game, then you're going to die. But you get to pick the game. What game would you pick? Easily tennis. Easily. If you took the population of the world, you're including elderly people, you're including children, and you look at like what percent can beat me in tennis, minuscule percentage, like 0.0000, right? Like, come on now. And any 4 or 5 level player can say that. From Ron Robbie, what are your top international destinations in your bucket list and why? It's mostly Japan for me right now because of the food culture. When I'm traveling, as I've mentioned, like food is kind of the thing that excites me most. Usually, I mean, I like scenery and beaches and culture, but food excites me a lot. Japan is kind of top of my list in that regard. And right now, like that's the one on my mind. So I'm going to leave it at that. I might have an opportunity to go to Thailand next December, which would be really cool. That has to do with some, wedding business and a friend of mine and all that. So maybe I'll see Thailand, which would be exciting. From Jason, Arizona or LA? So I'm assuming it's just which one do I prefer? LA. It's more fun in my opinion, and there's just more upside for me in LA. More vibrant, more to see, more to eat, more people to meet. I mean, yeah, that's what it comes down to. And obviously there are downsides to LA. One being the cost of living, 2 being the inconvenience of it, especially when you're trying to raise a family there. Sometimes, the commutes can be a real awful thing. It can the space, your living space can be smaller than you might like. But I don't need to deal with that stuff. I don't have to deal with a family, and my commute's not bad. And yeah, I think LA is a lot of fun for me. Other than the fact that a lot of my closest friends are not in LA, they're in New York. I'm really grateful to be able to spend a lot of time in LA. Arizona's great too. It's beautiful. Tucson is gorgeous. It's nice and warm in the winter. It's way more convenient than LA. When I go to an establishment, I can find a parking spot. Same cannot always be said for when I go somewhere in LA and there is nowhere to park, right? The simple things in life you begin to appreciate when you leave LA. But I still like LA for all the things it brings. That'll do it, everybody. Thank you again for leaving your comments and taking some interest in my ramblings about things that are not tennis. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.